and welcome to this module 1 of the Open Education resource on strategy formulation. In this module, we shall cover the introduction to strategic management. Once Alvin Toffler said that if you do not have a strategy, you will be part of somebody else's strategy. This saying of Alvin Toffler stands right because there are organizations that succeed and there are others which fail. And the only difference between the organization succeeding and failing is what strategy do they adopt. Strategy is a set of related actions that managers take to increase their company's performance. There are three major components when we talk about the overall strategy of an organization. The first among it is the leadership of the organization, which basically talk about the task of most effectively managing a company's strategy making process. The second aspect is of strategy formulation, which basically deals with the task of determining and selecting strategies. Third, and the most important aspect, is of strategy implementation, which covers the task of putting strategies into action to improve a company's efficiency and effectiveness. In the current OER, we shall be focusing on the strategy formulation aspect of strategic management. Now, to begin with, let's try and understand what is strategy. A company's strategy consists of the competitive moves and business approaches that managers employ to attract and please customers, compete successfully, grow the business, conduct operations, and achieve the targeted objectives. In other terms, we can also say that strategy is the overall plan of a firm deploying its resources to establish a favorable position and compete successfully against its competitors. It describes a framework of charting a course of action. It explicates an approach for the company that builds its strength and is a good fit with the firm's overall environment. Now, having understood that, let's try and see what strategic management means. So, strategic management is defined as the set of decisions and actions that result in formulation and implementation of plans designed to achieve a company's objective. Elaborating a bit more on that, it basically indicates the choices that managers have to make about how to attract and please customers, how to respond to changing market conditions, how to compete successfully, how to grow the business, and how to manage each functional capabilities, and finally, how to achieve the performance targets of the organization. Now, in order to justify and identify the alternatives for these questions, an organization works at three major levels, which are also called as levels of strategy or levels of strategic management. The first one is the corporate level, which is usually in form of a head office or the corporate office, where and it includes the level includes the CEOs, board of directors, and corporate staff. The next is business level, which may also include the divisional managers and staff, and it can also cover, in case of a conglomerate, the separate strategic business units. Now, within each separate business, there is also a functional level, which is also called as business functions, which covers the marketing, HR, human resources, finances, quality, production. So all the functional areas of management are at the functional level. Now, in order to fulfill these tasks, there are managers working on these levels. So at the corporate level, managers oversee the development of strategies for the whole organization. The CEO is the principal general manager who consult with other senior executives like board of members and other senior advisors of the company. At business level, there are business level managers, who are responsible for overall company, business units, or divisional performance. finally, at the functional level, the managers are responsible for supervising a particular task or operation, as we just mentioned in the previous slide as well. At the level, uh, we are talking about marketing, operations, accounting, human resources, and other functional areas of management. Now, continuing with the aspects of strategic management, let's look at some of the dimensions which have been attributed to strategic decision making. First, it requires the top management decisions. As we just saw that there are levels, and we need to look at the corporate level, business level, and then the functional level. Then it requires large amount of firms' resources, because whatever strategic decision we are taking is not only going to affect one or two departments, it is going to basically affect the whole organization. Then it affects the firm's long-term prosperity. Again, the strategic decision making, and the basic difference between a plan and a strategic plan, or a normal decision and a strategic decision, is that the strategy is always done for the longer term, and as it requires a large amount of resources as well, so the prosperity of the organization also comes into the picture. They're always future oriented, since it's a type of plan which are always meant for future, usually have a multifunctional consequence. Now, whenever we are taking a decision at the corporate level, it is going to affect each and every business level as well. And again, while transforming any of those corporate or business level decisions at the operational level, we need to look at all the functional areas of the organization, which basically makes this strategic decision a multifunctional decision. And certainly it requires considering the external environment of the organization. We are not only looking at the internal aspects, we are also supposed to look at the remote environment, the operating environment, the macro or the immediate operating environment where the organizations are working. So these are some of the major dimensions that affect strategic decision making process. Taking these dimension and considerations in mind, now let's try and look at the strategic management framework. There are two aspects when we talk about the framework of strategic management. One is the organizational context, which is derived from the mental models of the organizations, that what the promoters or the leaders or the top management of the organization think, what vision do they have, what is the purpose of the existence of the organization, and what are the structures and processes that have been derived by the organization in order to achieve the purpose and the mental model of the organization. So these three aspects make the organizational context. On the other side, there are distinctive competencies which have definitely been developed based on the structures and the processes of the organization. We shall be discussing these aspects in more detail when we'll be covering the organizational appraisal in module 3 of this OER. So there are distinctive competencies which also include the competencies of HR and other resources of the organization. Now, based on these competencies, the organization make a competitive strategy based on its strengths and competitive advantage that it have. And in order to check that whether the competitive strategy, to measure this particular aspect, we need to have some performance standards in place. Now, these three aspects collectively make the competitive context, and a blend between organizational and competitive context completes the overall strategic management framework of an organization. Now, based on our understanding of this strategic management framework, let's transform this thing into the strategic management process. In the process, the first step is of company mission. I won't say it's only the mission, it also covers the vision, philosophy, the overall mindset of the organization, what do they, why do they exist, what is the purpose. So all these aspects, along with their long-term objectives, forms the company's mission. And in order to formulate this company's mission, the organization is also supposed to look at the external and internal environment factors. So these three aspects, which is external environment, internal environment, and company's mission and philosophy, they go hand in hand, and they keep on you know interacting with each other so as to arrive at a final strategic analysis aspect, where the company usually discuss or considers the corporate level and business level strategies based on the environmental conditions. So the next step is of strategic analysis, among which the company usually make a choice. So far, this is the overall aspect of strategy formulation. Now, considering our OER, the company's mission and the overall aspects related to its philosophy will be covered in Module 2. The external and internal environment shall be covered in Module 3 under Environment Appraisal. The corporate level and business level strategies, the alternatives available under them, shall be covered under Module 4 and 5 respectively. And finally, at the end of this OER, we shall be talking about the strategic analysis and choice. But the process of strategic management doesn't end here. Till strategic analysis and choice, it is basically called as strategic formulation. Now, once a strategy has been chosen by the organization or the formulation process is done, the next aspect is of translating these choices into generic and grand strategies which have been considered at the analysis step. We transform them, or the organization transform them, into long-term objectives, into short-term objectives, and over here these grand or generic strategies or corporate or business level strategies are transformed into functional strategies and guiding policies. Then those aspects are implemented. Restructuring is done from time to time in the organization. A review is done. There is always a refocus, and a feedback loop keeps on running. And eventually, whatever standards have been set at these levels at the formulation stage are usually checked upon at the strategic control level. So that completes the strategic decision making process. And with those, we come to the end of module 1 of this OER on strategy formulation. Thank you for listening.